This is the Asea5. We meet every Friday so that we can share with you guys about these miraculous molecules we call redox signaling molecules. I am one of your regular hosts, Dr. Maureen Hayes from Galveston, Texas. I'm joined by the beautiful Ann Glenn and her husband, Jim Glenn from San Antonio. Ann is our nutritionist and physical fitness trainer. Jim is our money man. And then, of course, we have the illustrious Dr. Lee Osler, world famous author of the Redox Matters book. Do you have your book to show, Lee? And show it off. We love showing it off every time we can. So it's a fantastic book. And of course, he's a dentist in Washington State and also one of the founders and past presidents of AOSH, the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health, and an NRF2 expert. And I'm going to go on record right now because we've got a fantastic show for you tonight. But I do want to tell you that even though there's a lot of medical professionals on here, athletes, personal trainers, these products are not medical products. We're not here to make any claims. We don't cure, treat, diagnose anything. What these molecules do is they basically replenish molecules that you should have, but maybe have less of as you get older or you're under stress. And when we correct that deficiency, when we bring them back into balance, your body is a miraculous machine that knows how to take care of itself and will heal itself. I love to quote Dr. Lee. He talks about our inner doctors, right? So we're turning on our inner doctors. So tonight we have a fantastic couple of guests. One is Shawn Burke. He is a physical therapy assistant. He owns his own gym. He's an incredible elite athlete. I'm going to have him give a little bit of background because he's a triathlete. And actually, you stopped running for a while in your 50s, if I've got the story correct, Shawn. And then you got introduced to Redox. And then if you would, Shawn, come on, give us your background. Tell us how you got introduced. Tell us how it changed your behavior as far as your exercise and what you were able to accomplish. And then please take us into the story of Brenden, who is just an absolute miracle. And we're so incredibly honored to have him here. So Shawn, if you will start, we're going to break in and ask you questions along the way, but please give us a little bit of your background. Thank you.
Thanks, Marie. So as Marie said, my name is Shawn Burke. I'm actually 61 years old now. When I first got introduced to Asea, it was 2012, so I was 51 years old. So I guess this will be my 10th anniversary of being on the product. At that time, my background is I've been a physical therapist assistant since 1988. Worked in major hospitals, worked in private clinics, and then had my own training facility. And I actually, because of the COVID virus, we actually closed down my facility. And now I'm back into doing in-home physical therapy now. So I go to people's homes and actually do physical therapy in their homes with a company, which I really enjoy doing. So my background, before I became a physical therapist, I was in the service, was an Army Ranger from 1980 to 1986. And then got out and then went to physical therapy school, got my degree, and then started practicing physical therapy. Athletic has always been a forte in me. When I was in high school, I wrestled in high school, then got a full ride scholarship to the University of Washington, actually where Brenden is going to school now or just graduated from. And then the first quarter, they dropped the program. So then I decided, well, if they're going to do that, then I might as well join the service. Then I joined the service and I wrestled for the United States Army wrestling team for 3 years and traveled all around the world competing. And then when I got out of the service, I discovered the sport of triathlon. So I've been doing triathlon since 1988. And it's always been my way of trying to deal with, in high school, I just dealt with doing physical training just to deal with stuff that went on at home. Was raised by a single mom, and so I utilized that as an outlet to get me through those times. And then going into the service, obviously we have some pretty black demons that we come back with. And so I relied on my sports to get me through those times. And that was kind of my saving grace. You know, other people have other ways of dealing with things. That was my way of dealing with it. So I started competing in 1988, and that helped me get through some very dark, deep times of my life. And then as I train, I mean, if I've been racing for over 30 years doing triathlons, it started taking a toll on my body. And that started really, I started really tanking. I was to the point, I had done 17, or yeah, had done 16 Ironman or 17 Ironmans at that time, competed in about 140 races with triathlons. But the toll started taking it on my body. I started getting fatigue all the time. I started not being able to train at a level that I wanted to. I was training before I started going south. I was training 21, 22 hours a week. And at that time, when my body started crashing, I was maybe training 3 to 5 hours a week. And then the mental clarity started going bad. It's kind of interesting we're talking about this because of Olympics that just happened with Biles and having that mental breakdown. I could really relate to that because it was like, if I can't compete, if I can't do sports, then how am I going to deal with all these demons that I bring with me? I mean, that was a very safe environment for me to be in. And so I started really spinning out of control. Depression my wife can contest that I wasn't easy to live with because I didn't know how to deal with all those things that were going on. And then I discovered redox molecules. I went to a trade show and I saw the book of redox molecules, and being in the physical therapy field, I started reading about that and I started saying, wow, this is something I never really knew about. And so I started looking at it. I had actually put it in a bag and put it away for 2 weeks. And then with my body still not responding, I said, well, because I remember walking by the booth and them saying, oh, this is really going to help your athletic performance. And I'm like, oh yeah, they say that all the time. So I was like, I didn't really believe it. And
Hey,
then
Shawn,
yeah.
can I interrupt you? Just for the people in our own education, can you tell us what a triathlon is, what all that consists of, and what the distances are?
Sure. So a triathlon is a swim, and you have very distance. So it's a swim, bike, run. A sprint distance is a half-mile swim, 12-mile bike, and a 3-mile run. And then they have international distance, which is a 1K swim, 40K bike, 10K run. And then they have a half Ironman, which is 1.2 mile swim, 56-mile bike, and a 13.1 mile run. And then they have the full Ironman, which is 2.4 mile swim, followed by a 112-mile bike, followed by a marathon. And so I've done 19 of the Ironman races and over 200 of the international races in my career. So
Wow.
yeah. So then I started reading about redox molecules. I actually started listening to Dr. Gary Samuelson and Robinson Ward do some TED Talks on it. And that's when I started getting interested in it. So I started taking the product. I was 6 weeks out from my 18th Ironman. And at 6 weeks before that, I didn't even think I was going to be able to race because I wasn't training. I wasn't being able to do anything. And it was really starting to take a toll. But I started taking the redox molecules, and I was drinking 4 ounces twice a day. And it took me about 3 weeks before I started to notice a difference. The first thing was I started sleeping better, and then my nutrition. So I was eating better, and the nutrition was being absorbed into my system because I had more energy. And then my training started going back up. So that 5 hours a week went up to 10 hours a week, went up to 15. 2 hours back up to training 22, 23 hours a week. And then went and did my 6 weeks later, after being on the product, did my 18th Ironman. And I had taken 56 minutes off my previous time that I had raced. And so I was like, I'm really on to something. And then after doing an Ironman race, usually I have to take 4 weeks or about 2 weeks off, 2 to 3 weeks off. I was back to training 3 days later, back to racing 2 weeks later. And usually I have to wait 6 weeks before I race. And that particular year, I end up racing 9 more races, set 9 personal records and like 5 course records. And so since being on Redox molecules, I've raced, I started doing my tally here, 65 races I've done since being on the product. And I've won 62 of those races and was second in the other 3 races. So, and before that, racing on the product, I had won, of those 150 races, I may have won 4 races. So it's been a huge game changer for me. I just got done racing. We got to race again last week. So the first time I raced in 2 weeks, and I got a gold medal for my age group. And I think I set a course record, but I'm not sure yet. So I'm in a new age group. So now my goal is to set some course records coming up this year. And I'm actually going to race tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, if you guys don't keep me here too long.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So can I ask a question? When you went from when you were down to 5 hours a week and then you bumped it up to near 20, what was it that allowed you to be able to do that? And did you do that? Was that a decision, or was that just because of how you felt?
Well, it was mostly how I felt, because it was like the recovery was the big part of it. So what I was doing is, before, when I was training firemen, you would do like a 112-mile bike ride followed by a 13-mile run, and then you would have to take a couple days off to do that, to recover. I was actually doing that particular training, 112-mile bike, 13-mile run, and then I get up the next morning and do another 13-mile run or another 50-mile bike. And so that started giving me the confidence, and it was the recovery that made me get the confidence. And I think that's the edge where with the athletes is that you start feeling more confident in your training. And, the training is a big part of an athlete becoming successful. If you can have successful training sessions back to back, that's what makes you become a better athlete. And that's what I was doing. So like right now, I raced on Sunday, and today was the first day I took off. I raced on Sunday, and then I trained on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, took today off because I'm going to race tomorrow. And I've never done that before. Even when I was in my 30s and 40s, I would have to take some time off. And now I'm training 6 days a week. I'll train 6 days a week in a row, and then I'll take a day off. And I'm 61 years old, and you normally don't hear that. And so that's why I'm having success in my races, is because of that constant training, constant pushing themselves. The other thing is that when you do triathlons, you usually I race about 7 races a year in a season. And you try to have what we call an A race. And an A race means that you're gunning for one particular race to have a good race. Well, now all my races are A races, because I'm actually doing really well. And so I can race hard. Like tomorrow when I race, I'll race hard as if I raced last week. And normally you normally don't see that. So when you can put 6 to 7 races, A races together back to back in a 12-week period, that's pretty amazing. So that's kind of my mind thinking.
So that was recovery you were talking about, but you made the comment that since you did what you said, 61 out of 64 or something like that, that you won them, which was a contrast from the period of time prior to that. So does a better recovery account for that? Or while you were actually in the race, were you a better racer? Were you better physically in the race because of this as well?
Well, I am actually racing faster now than I did when I was 30 and 40. So my times are faster at 61 than I was when I was racing in my 30s and 40s and even in my 50s. So I'm actually putting some really good races together, but the confidence that I'm building to have those quality of training sessions, it comes down to having good training sessions, because then the result is a good race. And staying injured free, I have not been injured, knock on wood. So no injuries, and I was getting injured when I was in my 30s and 40s. I was getting injured, because if you race that many races, you're bound and determined to get some injuries. And I haven't had any injuries since being on the product. I've had a couple, like muscle pulls. It's kind of funny because I do double workouts. So I'll train in the morning and I'll train in the afternoon. And sometimes I'll train in the morning and then I'll go to work and then I can't remember like, did I do a workout this morning? Because I'm really feeling good right now. And so that was, that's something that's really got my eye opening, because sometimes I'll think, wait a minute, I can't remember. Oh yeah, I did. I guess I did run this morning. I did swim. And that's another confidence builder right there. So, but I think the biggest part of it for me is the mental part of it. I mean, it's something that I really feel, and some of you guys have heard this before, but when you, and I think Ann can probably contest this, being a trainer too, working with some of the athletes. I mean, we thrive on that. But for me, it's definitely saved my life. I mean, to think that if I wasn't able to race or train, I don't know where I would be right now. I really don't, because you fight those demons for such a long time, and you're able to put them in a bottle and cover them up. And this product has allowed me to be a better athlete, but it's also allowed me to face these issues that I've for many years put away and didn't address. And yeah, it's made me a better person. And so the athlete part of it is good, but what I'm really proud of is the person I'm learning to become and the people that I'm able to talk to who have the same issues. Because before you couldn't talk to them because you were too embarrassed. And now I'm actually able to help some other veterans talk through these situations and get them on the right track. And it's something that it's way better than a gold medal. The athletic part of it is a byproduct, but this product has made me such a better person, and it only wants me to be even better in the years to come. So
beautiful. Lee, can you maybe explain a little bit about, can you hear me okay, Maureen?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I thought I could hear Ann there for a second too. So maybe y'all are.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, and I don't want to run out of time, but Lee, I maybe want you to come back and explain why these molecules, or maybe real quick, Lee, explain what these molecules are that we're talking about that can help Shawn, and then very shortly we're going to Shawn explain what, how you know this amazing young man right on the screen with Brenden. So Lee, what is it about these molecules that does that?
Well, the fundamental issues in our bodies and all of our cells are, how does a cell know when it's in trouble? How does it know when it's being stressed? And there are signaling mechanisms built into our cells programming that can detect when a unbalanced oxidative and inflammatory state exists. We have all kinds of, we call them stressors. They can be radiation, toxicity, hypoxia, bad nutrition. All these things produce a stress on the cell, which activates bad gene pathways that create inflammation and disease. And to counter that, there are healthy genes that can be expressed or signaled to turn on that will create an inside the cell, or we call it an endogenous antioxidant protective defensive mechanism. And when that balance tips to the direction of inflammation, we have all kinds of things happen where cells and tissues in our body doesn't work well, and we can't recover, as we just talked about. And so what a redox signaling molecule does is it simply is activating pathway genes that help to defend and protect us and to help us to recover and to be at our best, just like when we were much younger and these pathways were much more active. And so what we have with the Asea product is the ability, I like Maureen's description of it as a biohack. These are bioidentical molecules that are made by our mitochondria. They're native to us. That's why they're not toxic to us. And we can replenish them and use them in a way that will reset or help our cells to function optimally And that is the inner doctor. And I like that expression because otherwise I'm having outside agents, whether they're drugs or procedures or whatever, from an outside in approach are acting on me to manipulate my health. But what I want is nature's design to be working in my behalf that allows me to heal from or to recover from the inside out. So it's a beautiful system it's the way we're programmed, and as we get old or we become exposed to toxicity, it less happens because we don't have the same level of signaling occurring as we get older. So what we're trying to do through lifestyle and replenishment is to reset the cell's ability to operate like it's supposed to or like it used to.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Shawn, do you mind sharing the story? This is one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard. And Maureen, I don't know if you want to give a disclaimer real quick. But Shawn, I know this is a very difficult thing for you to do this. And you have one of the most compassionate, tender hearts that I know. And again, it's an honor to know you. And here in this area, we work with a lot of veterans. We were just up in a small town north of San Antonio, and Rick Chazinski does yoga with a lot of disabled veterans. But if you're okay, Maureen, do you want to add anything real quick before Shawn starts into this?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. It probably bears repeating that we are not a medical company. We're not here to diagnose, treat, or cure anything. What you're about to hear is nothing short of miraculous. So just understand that what we do, gosh, I'm getting emotional, allows the body to heal. So go ahead, Shawn, take it away. So you guys get your tissues ready.
Yeah, this might be harder than even doing an Ironman race. So this story is, I've told it a lot of times, and each time I tell it, it gets harder and harder because he keeps getting better and better. And so my story is that, and it's all a true story. So none of this is made up at all. But Brenden, I had known Brenden when he was in high school, and I went to his graduation party, and he was getting ready, or he was going into pre-med, so he's going to go to medical school. Very smart individual. He was like valedictorian ×2 or whatever it is. I mean, he's this 4.0, very smart individual, and has a very big heart for people and everything too. But he was was going to school, and in November he was going to go meet his dad to go hunting, and he was driving down a road, and a deer jumped out in front of him, and he swerved and he rolled his vehicle. I heard about him being injured. I heard he was transported to a hospital, and it wasn't sounding good. And I was like totally floored. I mean, I had just seen him. This was November, so I had seen him in June when he had graduated, and I was devastated because his dream was to go to medical school. That's what he wanted to do. That's what his goal was. He wanted to be a surgeon. And so I heard this story, and obviously I knew about the product, and I kept following him in the hospital. I know he was I think and Brenden will correct me here when he's back on, but I think he was in ICU for 49 days, and then the hospital for 165 days or something like that. But I mean, it was a lot of time. And so I got it right. Yeah. I don't want to overplay it, but he, and so
49 days, yes.
Yeah.
And it was actually October, not November.
Oh.
Mm, close enough.
Close enough, yeah. So I was working at the hospital at that time as a physical therapist, and Brenden, after months and months of being in the hospital, got released to go home. And the crazy thing is that when he was first injured, the doctors said to the parents, you need to euthanize him. I mean, he's not going to have a normal life anymore, and for that you need to remake that decisions. Well, his parents said, we're not going to do that. We're just going to bring him home. And so they did bring him home. They brought him home in a hospital bed, and they said, if we have to take care of him 24/7, we're going to do that. And here was and he was an athletic person. I mean, he was very athletic. He was doing running and triathlons and stuff like that. So I, as a therapist and as a person who had a passion for people, couldn't accept that. It's like that can't happen. And the doctors, said, try to talk the parents out of it, but they didn't talk about it. Parents brought him home. And when he got home, I got a hold of his dad and I said, hey, I got something that might work for him. And his dad said, well, what is it? And I said, redox molecules. And his dad is a remind me, Brenden, he's a engineer or chemical engineer.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has a degree in chemical and metallurgical engineering.
So he knew that this could be something. So we took him to a meeting, and here's Brenden. And I tell the story because I remember going to a meeting, and I remember the dad getting Brenden out of the wheelchair, and Brenden couldn't even sit up in the wheelchair. And he's in a wheelchair, and Brenden is like falling over in this wheelchair, and his dad wheels him into the meeting, and they start talking about redox molecules. And at this time, Brenden couldn't talk. And I remember sitting behind Brenden, and Brenden, again, he had a medical background, so he knew. And Brenden kept doing this. He kept pointing at the screen, just like that. He was pointing. And I'm like, what is he doing? And he's like, and he looked at his dad and he goes, Brenden understood it. Here's Brenden, who is barely out of they just got him out of the hospital bed, put him in his wheelchair and go into this meeting. And Brenden is like on fire. He's like, this is it. This is what I want. And I remember his dad going, I want the product and I want it now. And I'm like, well, I don't have it. He goes, you need to give me that product and you need to get it to me now. And I'm like, okay, well, I remember driving home and he texted me driving home, do you got the product yet? And we got him on the product, and Brenden started drinking the product. And here's Brenden, in bed, barely able to get out of bed, max assist to get him out of bed. And being a physical therapist, I got to be his physical therapist. So I got to see Brenden sit up for the first time. I got to see Brenden stand up for the first time. I got to see Brenden take his first steps. I watched a miracle unfold in front of me. And it was amazing to watch. And I can't tell you how many times I went home at nighttime crying because Brenden got to sit up for the first time. Or Brenden got to stand and to be a part of that. You guys, you can never tell me this doesn't work. You'll never, ever convince me, because I watched it in my own eyes, and I watched him take his first step. I watched him go upstairs for the first time. I can remember getting Brenden in the swimming pool and swimming with him, doing therapeutic swimming with him. And I can
remember that. And when I did the flip turn, it scared the poop out of you.
Yeah. I was in the pool, and he's like, I'm like, what? And he's like, and all of a sudden he took off and dove underneath the water and started swimming. And I was like shocked. But you know what that really showed me? Brenden, for the first time, had freedom. He didn't have anybody hanging on to him. He didn't have a walker. He felt the freedom of movement. And his eyes, he got up out of the water, and his eyes were big as saucers. And I was like, wow, this is powerful. And the other part of this, I mean, and then Brenden got better and better and better and better. And I remember one time I drove to his house, and I don't remember what I was going to his house for. And Brenden says, I've been working on my running. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I remember driving my car up to his apartment, or where his parents were living. And all of a sudden, I just saw this flash of a person go by me. And I'm like, what in the heck was that? Brenden waited till I got there and sprinted in front of me to show me that he was back to running. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And it's story after story. But the other part of this powerful story is that when I had my own training facility, I had a doctor that was coming into our facility. And Brenden started coming after Brenden got done with therapy. He was still coming to my facility, and I was training with Brenden, and he was lifting weights and stuff like that. And Brenden, and you have to really picture this. So Brenden is in my training facility, and he's already done his workout, and he walks out the front door. This doctor walks in the front door, and he's like, who was that? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I know that person. And I go, you do? And he goes, yeah. And he told me, is that Brenden? And being a doctor, I said, yeah. And he said, oh, that's a miracle. And I said, how do you know Brenden? He goes, I was one of the doctors that said to pull the plug on Brenden. I had a doctor weeping in my front office and telling me that that's a miracle that just walked out of this. And I would never forget his words. His words to me were, what I just saw will change the way that I practice medicine for the rest of my life. I just saw a miracle, and I will never give up on another patient again.
And that's why they call me the Mighty Miracle Man.
Yeah. And Brenden, and I'm gonna let Brenden talk here in a minute, but because I could talk about Brenden all day long, all night long. But he graduated from junior college. I saw and now he's just, so he was at North Idaho Community College. They said he never would walk again. They said he never go back to school again. He never read again. He never would do anything again. And Brenden has graduated from junior college with associate's degree. Then he transferred over to University of Washington. And he graduated a few months ago, and now he's going back to, or going to undergraduate school. The guy never ceased to amaze me. And Glenn asked me, he goes, do you still talk with Brenden? And I said, I get a text from Brenden almost every week. And the latest one I got was, Brenden and I obviously came very close. And Brenden calls me his second dad. And when you have a person like that that says, you're my second dad, and that you're the only person who really believed in me and had confidence in me, and that he loves me with all his heart. Yeah, I still hear from Brenden. Glenn.
When there's someone like Shawn who is so invested in you, you can't just drop them. He really is like my singing father. He will also watch me take my first steps. He also helped me learn to write and all of that. But that was after the brain injury. So he's kind of like my TBI dad.
Yeah. One of the things that Brenden did when he was at our training facility is he said, I want to become a trainer. And I said, okay. And he says, if I become a trainer, can I train at your facility? And I said, you bet. So I paid for Brenden to take a personal training course, and he obviously aced that. And he full circle became a trainer at my training facility and started working with some of my other clients. And when you see Brenden working with another head injury client and motivating them and getting them to the next level, how can you guys put a price tag on that? I mean, this is it's an unreal. So it's, you know, full circle. And now he's got his own training company, and he trains people online. And you know, Brenden gets, so I mean, what more can I say? This is the real deal, guys. I watched this, and yeah, Brenden is a success story because he believed in the product. He's a success story because he took it regularly, and he still takes it, and he applies what he preaches, he applies what he preaches. So he's the real deal. I mean, there is no, he believes in the product 100%. He loves the product. He takes it all the time. I'm gonna let Brenden talk, but I just want to let everybody know that Brenden is, I mean, it may sound, when he was in the accident, and Brenden can talk about it, he hung upside down in the vehicle for a long time. So it did some damage to his pellet. And so some people try to judge him based on the way he talks, but he's very bright. It's a structural problem. That's the reason why it's sometimes hard to understand him. And he gets excited because he loves telling people his story. And so sometimes I got to get him to slow down a little bit. But Brendan's, he's there. He's 100% there. I mean, how can you go to University of Washington and graduate from University of Washington if you didn't have it? And again, you know, they said he'd never do it again. They said he would never walk again, talk again. So,
Shawn, how long was the upside down?
was it 2.5 hours, Brenden?
And it was somewhere between 2 and like 8 hours. They don't know. I was in such a remote part of the border between Idaho and Montana that there's no cell coverage, and the truck driver actually found me on his load to drive to the nearest emergency phone line. And it was foggy, so Life Flight couldn't fly in. What crap was then? And so they sent an ambulance from the nearest Trauma 1 center because I was so bad, which was Missoula, Montana. And so an hour there for the ambulance, then they extracted me with the jaws of life, and I finally got some medical assistance, and then an hour back.
So Maureen Hayes, you could probably address, if you hang upside down in a vehicle for 2.5 hours, what does that do to your brain?
Oh, you could just imagine the pressure, you know, where our equilibrium isn't made to be like that. If you've ever been on a ride where you've been hanging upside down and the blood is rushing to your head, you know, I'm no expert, I'm no neurologist or anything, but I would imagine, especially after 2.5 hours, just the pressure, the blood flow, there'd be swelling and whatnot on the brain. Especially, did you say, Brenden, it was somewhere between 2.5 and 8 hours? Is that what I heard? They don't know. I can't even imagine.
They don't know. And luckily, they didn't even have to cut out a piece of my skull. And they put the pressure monitoring.
Right, to relieve the pressure. And you were in a coma, weren't you? You were in a coma. weren't you,
Yes.
for while you were in the ICU? Probably an induced one. Yeah. So what a crazy, Brenden, I
You
just
know,
can't.
you think about hanging upside down for 2.5 hours, and it just came to me. The light just went on. The determination that Brenden had during that time, that I'm going to live, I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to hang in there. I mean, to be hanging upside down for 2.5 hours or longer, that gives you the character of Brenden. As he's hanging upside down, he's like, I'm not giving up. This is not going to do me in. This is not going to be into my story, and I'm going to get through this. And that's the way he's been since day one, is that he's not going to let this take him down. And there's, proof right there.
Yeah.
Shawn, and I was unconscious during the time while I was hanging upside down. So it's just an internal part of me that I don't give up. What's that?
That's right.
Now,
Really a miracle, the whole story. I mean, you obviously have drive, determination. I mean, just your strength is just quite amazing when others would have given up. And I truly believe God used Shawn, you to know Brenden before this happened, and you were instrumental in introducing him to Asea Redox.
can you hear her okay?
Can you hear me at all?
A little mumble, but I hear what you said. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. One of the reasons I went into physical therapy was because when I was in the military, my job was to seek and destroy. And you have to put that behind you. And that's one of the reasons I became a therapist, because I didn't no longer want to be in that mode of seek and destroy. I wanted to be seek and success with people. And Brenden, Brenden, I mean, I've had plenty of patients in my life, other patients that have got, been successful, and that's what keeps me driving. But Brenden just becomes full circle. It makes me realize that Brenden helps me more than he realizes too, because when you see that success story, you're in the right business, you're in the right calling of where you need to be. And, reinforcement that, I could put the past behind me and move forward. And this is what, if I move forward with a positive attitude, I'll be able to help people like Brenden and stuff. And so, it's something that it's hard to explain if you don't understand that. But, Brenden is a person too who's had a lot of dark times in his time going through rehab. Brenden has texted me many times on the phone and said, I'm really having a hard time. And I think people forget that people with head injuries to go through that, they're just like anybody else, or even more, because they have that emotional black hole that some of us, that we don't realize they do. And I can remember Brenden saying, I just want people to understand what I'm feeling. I want people to understand what I'm going through, and to know that Brenden, and to know that the redox molecules has helped Brenden through those black holes too. I mean, there's a lot of head injuries, are in that they don't make it because they end up committing suicide, just like veterans do, because that's a black hole. And I know that Brenden has been there before and has thought about that, and him and I have talked about it. So, what I talked about earlier, I can relate to what Brenden's talking about. And Brenden is, thank God he never went down that aisle or down that road. And so I just want people to realize this is a much more in-depth and powerful story. I mean, there's so many different moving parts that are here. Brenden did get better, but he is getting better. But to think about this gentleman who almost gave up on life, but it's, I don't even know if I'm articulating this very good, but I'm just trying to let everybody know that when you look at this is so much a bigger picture, and that we have an opportunity to really help people in so many different ways. And this is just a small iceberg of what can be done. And Brenden, I mean, he calls himself the Miracle Man, but he is also motivated a lot of people, including myself. And I think that that's a calling that Brenden has, and he's going to continue to drive that way. So
Now, if I remember correctly, Shawn, did you not tell that doctor what it was that really helped bring Brenden back?
I told him that it was redox molecules, and his comment was, whatever he's doing, he better stay with it, because that's a miracle. He thought that Brenden was transferred to another facility and that he was still bedridden. He had no idea what Brenden was doing. He had no clue. And it was probably 2.5 years after that had happened or something like that. And I wish I would have had a video. I mean, the doctor was dumbfounded. And I have the picture, I don't have it with me, but he took a picture with Brenden that day, or maybe the next day or something like that. Brenden was there, and I told Brenden, and Brenden said, will you take a picture with me? So we have a picture of the doctor standing next to Brenden with his arm around him and saying that, and he says, you know, he was happy to take the picture with Brenden. He goes, I feel like I want my picture with you, not you want your picture with me. He goes, because you are the one is the miracle here. And so it was just amazing. Yeah.
Now, how long ago did this happen, Shawn, Brenden? How long ago was the accident?
Go ahead, Brenden.
Yeah, it was almost 10 years ago, October 15th, 2011.
That's amazing.
How much of I guess at that time, all you had was the liquid. How much were you drinking, Brenden? Do you remember?
Just the normal 2 ounces morning, 2 ounces night. I just responded very well as I'm fairly young. I was only 18 at that time, so I already had an abundance of the molecules, but I had stalled in my progress in pain recovery, and that tipped the scale to improve more.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Brenden texted me, I don't remember when it was, well, maybe a couple of years ago, and he was taking a class, and guess what they were talking about in the class? Redox molecules.
That's amazing.
At University of Washington. And Brenden going, they don't know half of what this can do. They don't even know. I started laughing. I was like, good for you, Brenden. He's like, I know more about the redox molecules than they're trying to teach me in school.
I think that's really cool for Brenden. You know, the whole point of, we talked earlier about what's the science here. Neurological tissues, brain cells are very susceptible to oxidative damage, which is what happens in a concussion or head trauma injury. And it's not just the initial injury, it's the secondary rebound oxidation that happens. And from the research that I've done, what they're really focusing on, one of the things they really focus on for days and weeks afterwards is supporting that antioxidant activity that helps to put out the oxidative storms that occur in brain cells that have been subjected to concussion type injuries. And so that's really what, Asea helps to do. Again, we're not diagnosing, we're not treating, but we know from the redox biology, if you can turn on that process and create native antioxidant support, then you're going to help dampen down the oxidative injury that's occurring from those kind of traumas.
All we're really doing, Lee, right, Maureen, is just adding more of what's already in us.
Yes.
But because of the injury, there was a lack of, or it needed more of the molecules to do the repair work. So it's actually the body doing all the work. It's just we're adding the native molecules back in. And, you know, Brenden, every time I've met you, you truly are amazing to me, because every time I've met you, you have the most amazing smile on your face. Just like right now. And I know you believe in God. I know you believe in Jesus. And I know you attribute a lot of that to that. But son, you've got something deeply embedded in you that I wish we could bottle up and sell that as well. Share that with the world. But there's a favor I have to ask you. Can we see your guns? Show them.
Fantastic.
Well, you know,
Talk louder.
okay. I feel like I'm having to shout, but
You're okay.
can you hear me okay? This blue
Yeah.
bottle, it's hope in a bottle, isn't it, Brenden? It's hope in a bottle to everyone who tries it. And we watched
Yes.
you change over the 10 years, only 6 for us, but we've loved your story. It's been so inspiring to thousands and thousands of people. We share it all the time. And we know it works for workouts. I've seen it. We know it works for bad injuries. I've seen it with Jim. We know it works on the interior, the heart, the lungs, the brain, all that. And I mean, you're just a walking miracle of what these molecules can do if you just take enough long enough. And the gene study backs it, what it does for the brain, for the serotonin, for the sleep, you know, the immune system. You know, you're just a built-up machine now. Look at you.
But the
Well, speaking of guns, I just filmed a YouTube video on the most effective bicep exercises and mentioned Asea Redox in that as the one thing you can do to make any exercise more effective.
That's great.
I wished I could have been there in that university class listening to that Redox lecture. That would have been
Yeah.
You know, and I think what this all points out to, guys, we never know when something's going to happen. We always think about the body being in disease, but you never know when something's going to happen, like what happened to Brenden. You know, we all get injured. Shawn, you've been injured when you're doing your racing. So it's always remembering that the body's going to need an assist, but you never know when it's going to need it. And that's why we recommend everyone look at these molecules, because you never know when.
Right.
Right, Maureen? Now, Maureen, when are you doing your first Ironman?
When am I doing my first?
Uh-huh.
Hey, you know what? I am dying to do a Disney marathon, you know, put on a little tutu and a tiara, and I don't even care how far I get.
We're just gonna,
But
we're
you
gonna
guys
just
are
run
so
from
much fun.
game to game at the Disney World at Disneyland. That's awesome. So,
Hey,
Brenden, you've got
hey,
a
Glenn.
picture back on.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of something when you were talking about Brenden and his smile, and what I'm realizing that the reason why you see that smile and it gets bigger and bigger each time is when you have been through at the doorsteps of death and you're brought back, like Brenden has, that smile is he realizes that has been given a second chance, and he has taken it to the ultimate level that he can. And you're right. Every time I see Brenden, he gets a bigger smile because he realizes how precious life is and that he is very thankful to be here. And that's what I see in Brenden's smile.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Brenden, you need to be the model for
You guys
the
are both
Renew
such
28.
inspirations. You know,
Yeah.
your athletic abilities, Shawn, you know, especially in your early 60s, what you're able to accomplish and how you've helped Brenden. And Brenden, you really are a miracle man, honestly.
Well,
It's an incredible story.
Brenden,
I feel
yeah,
honored just to have
well,
been
and
here
his
and
story-
heard it from you guys directly. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Brenden, thank you. Shawn Burke, thank you. Next week, Dr. Lossler, can you raise your hand?
Of course. Look at this.
This is what we're talking about next week. So, stop moving it. We'll talk about this next week. But Lee is going to explain why he wrote the book. So we're going to hear the whole story from Dr. Osler, correct, Lee?
You bet. We'll enjoy looking forward to it.
All right, guys, we appreciate it. We love you all.
Everybody.
Thank you so much. Brenden, thank you. Shawn, thank you.
Have a good run tomorrow.
And the thousands of lives that you're going to change, both Shawn Burke and Brenden, with this story. It'll go on forever and ever and ever. And thank you so much for sharing it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Okay, Lee,
you.
go
Bye.
ahead and go up.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen.
Either give me the control back or you do it, Lee.
Yes, the message.
Stop the live Facebook.
Okay.